Straight ahead on Law and Crime Daily. Prosecutors work to build a murder case after an officer dies from injuries during the storming of the U.S. Capitol building.
They fought very hard.
A breakdown of the arrest already made and the suspects investigators are still searching for. The woman wanted for assaulting a teen after wrongly accusing him of stealing her phone is finally caught. How police tracked her down across the country.
No, he's not leaving. Show me the proof.
Plus, an update in the Dee Dee Blanchard case. Why Gypsy's former boyfriend is asking a judge to set aside his conviction. And arguments continue for the so-called doomsday cult couple. Should Lori Vallow and Chad Daybell's prosecutor be removed? Law and Crime Daily covering court cases from coast to coast. Welcome everyone to Law and Crime Daily. I'm Brian Buckmire along with Terri Austin. Federal authorities are opening a murder investigation into the death of a Capitol police officer after the attempted insurrection. Authorities say U.S. Capitol Police Officer Brian Sicknick died Thursday night of injuries sustained on duty when a mob stormed the Capitol building.
He was snatched into a crowd, he was beaten, he was kicked, he was tased several times.
According to Capitol Police officials, Sicknick collapsed after returning to his division and later died in a hospital. His death is being investigated by federal authorities as well as the D.C. Metropolitan Police Department. More than 50 officers were also injured.
There was a lot of valiant fighting by the members of the Metropolitan Police Department there. At one point, several officers, as a result of munitions and pepper spray and tear gas, being able to step off the line, be triaged quickly and back on the line to try to ensure the safety and security of our Capitol building.
Multiple agencies are working to identify people involved in the riot. The FBI is offering a $50,000 reward for information leading to the arrest and conviction of the suspects seen here, believed to have planted pipe bombs at the Republican and Democratic National Committee headquarters. And D.C. police have released this 27-page document containing persons of interest wanted for Capitol insurrection.
We have authorized a reward of up to $1,000 for information that leads to the arrest and conviction of persons responsible. And I should add that we already are receiving information and valuable tips in from residents and people who have identified some of these individuals.
D.C. police say they received nearly 20,000 tips, which have already led to the capture and arrest of suspects. Richard Barnett is accused of breaking into Speaker Nancy Pelosi's office, placing his feet on her desk, and stealing a letter. Barnett was arrested in Little Rock, Arkansas. He's facing charges of entering and remaining on restricted grounds, violent entry, and theft of public property. Other people now charged include a man accused of bringing Molotov cocktails to D.C. and a West Virginia representative who filmed himself storming the building. Officials say they're far from done making arrests. The chaos at the Capitol has raised a lot of questions about what federal charges people involved could face. Law and Crime's Angenette Levy spoke with a former federal prosecutor about sedition and more.
Yeah, that's right, Brian. Current and former U.S. attorneys say that there are really a laundry list of charges that could apply in this case. And the U.S. attorney overseeing the District of Columbia says one of those charges includes sedition. Now, there are a bunch of other charges on the list as well, including civil disorder, which includes any activity that keeps law enforcement from performing its duties. That can carry 5 years in prison. The Federal Riot Act applies to anyone who traveled interstate to incite a riot. That also carries a possible 5-year prison sentence. And rebellion and insurrection, that includes inciting or engaging in rebellion against the United States. That can carry a maximum 10 years in prison. Those charges are all part of a U.S. code entitled treason, sedition, and subversive activities.
I think there's a lot of statutes that are potentially applicable here, ranging from relatively minor, like trespass, all the way to charges like murder that are death eligible. From what I've seen publicly reported, there is a strong basis, in my opinion, to investigate and potentially prosecute people for seditious conspiracy. I mean, that charge, which is 18 U.S. Code Section 2384, requires two or more people to join a conspiracy, which just means to agree to overthrow the government of the United States by force.
And Ben Glassman says that seditious conspiracy charge is actually a little more broad, and it can include trying to prevent a law from actually being carried out. And that carries a hefty penalty, a maximum of 20 years in federal prison. Brian?
Thanks, Angenette. Joining us now for a deeper dive into the legal matters is criminal defense attorney Julie Rendelman, along with Terri Austin, of course, Angenette Levy. Juliet, you're a former prosecutor, and you've been a defense attorney for some of these New York protests as well. What is the prosecution of these cases with the 20,000 tips coming in going to look like?
So, keep in mind, most of these we're dealing with federal charges, and I can promise you that the federal investigators investigating this are going to, turn over every single rock that's possible in terms of trying to determine who is particularly responsible for each act, but even more importantly, the death of this police officer. And so, what they're going to be doing is they're not just going through the tips, they're going to be going through video footage, every single bit of video footage, beginning, during, and after, to see if they can find anyone surrounding this individual. I think one of the other big issues that's going to come up is an autopsy. They're going to want to know exactly what the cause of death is for this police officer, because as we know he was beaten. We don't know exactly what happened, but we know that when he returned to his command, he collapsed. So the autopsy is going to be another big issue that they're going to be investigating. It's going to take them a lot of time and manpower, but at the end of the day, I'm confident that someone or more than one person is going to be held responsible, not just for the death of this police officer, but for other actions in regards to what happened at the Capitol.
Now, Terri, death of an officer is one thing, but death of an officer defending the United States Capitol, could there be heftier penalties for those accused of this crime?
Well, Brian, it does depend on whether it's under local D.C. law or whether it's federal law. The penalties are very similar, but they're not identical. Under D.C. law, assault carries 10 years. Under federal law, it would be 30 years. And if someone who might have killed the officer involved, that would carry a penalty under D.C. law of life in prison. But if it's under federal law, that could be death or life in prison. So they're very similar, but they aren't identical.
Gotcha. Now, Angenette, what's the status of the people who have been arrested so far?
Brian, more than 80 people have been arrested by federal police and D.C. police. More arrests are expected as more tips come in, and dozens of those people have already had their initial court appearances. They were released afterwards, and the judge has ordered them not to return to the D.C. area until their next court appearances in June.
All right, thank you all for your input. Still ahead on Law and Crime Daily, why a man convicted of stabbing his girlfriend's mother to death is asking a judge to set aside his criminal case. But first, police catch the woman seen on video falsely accusing a teen of stealing her phone. We look into her lengthy criminal background next. The question of whether the trial of the former officers involved in the death of George Floyd will be delayed remains unsolved. Attorneys for the ex-cops, including Derek Chauvin, appeared in a remote hearing in Minneapolis. The trial is set to begin March 8th, but attorneys for Chauvin and Tu Tao are asking it to be delayed until July, citing concerns over the coronavirus. An attorney for Thomas Lane told the judge it should remain in March, saying the colder weather might limit public reaction. Prosecutors asked for it to begin in June. Floyd was killed last May after officers kneeled on his neck for more than 8 minutes. The judge is expected to rule at a later date. A woman charged with wrongfully accusing a black teenager of stealing her phone in a hotel lobby has now been arrested. 22-year-old Maya Ponsetto was captured near her home in Ventura County, California. The local sheriff's office says Ponsetto was uncooperative, resisted arrest, and tried to slam the door of her car on one of the deputies as they forcibly removed her. The arrest was in coordination with the New York City Police Department. The boy's father, Grammy-winning jazz musician Kenyon Harold, recorded the incident in the Arlo Hotel on his cell phone.
Show me
This is my phone.
Show me. No.
You don't have to explain nothing to her.
Take the case off. That's mine. Literally, get it back. Please.
Are you kidding me? You feel like there's only one iPhone made in the world?
No. Okay, then show me the.
No, you get a life.
Over there. No,
what's on your background? You better go use find my iPhone. Go do that.
Find my iPhone is on.
Can you
on
come
that
in?
right
No, you can't. No,
I'm
you
the manager
can't.
of the hotel.
I don't care.
He will
This is
right
my
now.
son.
Hey,
Didn't you see me just come downstairs? elevator?
I'm trying to help. Man.
No, but you're not helping.
I
What
am.
you're being is disrespectful.
No, I'm trying to settle the
No.
situation.
I'm asking, my son has nothing to do with her.
No.
I'm trying to figure out what's
but
going
he has
on
my
in the
phone.
lobby.
Then show me the proof. No, he's not leaving. Show me the proof.
Are you
Show me
kidding
the
me?
proof.
You better get on.
I need you away.
Let's go,
I
kid.
need you away.
I'm sorry.
Better get on. We have what you see two black people.
No, I'm not letting him walk away with my phone.
You better get on.
No, please get my phone back. I cannot not have my phone.
Listen, get your ass on.
Back with me is Julie Rendelman and Terri Austin. Julie, Ponsetto is on 3-year probation in LA County. Her arrest sounds like there could be criminal charge there as well. What do you think of her criminal cases will look like in the next couple months?
I find myself shaking my head every time I see this video. And so, look, she has 3 years probation. If she violates probation in California, she can be looking at jail for that case. Now we tack on the fact that when she got arrested for the case in New York, she apparently assaulted the police officers and resisted arrest there. Now we have another charge or several charges there that could potentially have her facing jail time as well. And we don't know the specifics of the New York charges, but we certainly know there are New York charges. There are likely felony if there's extradition. And so now she's not just facing the 2 different counties in California, but she's coming back to New York and she's going to have to face those as well, where she also is potentially facing a felony and jail time.
Exactly. Now, Terri, like Julie said, we don't know the charges in New York as yet, but she is being extradited. It appears she has cases from coast to coast. What's that New York City case going to look like, and what potential charges could she face?
You know, I think the fact that we have video is definitely going to assist with the prosecution of whatever ultimate charges we have against Ponsetto. And, you know, a spokesman for the Manhattan DA said that they were thoroughly investigating the incident. And what I'm thinking is that there are going to be criminal charges for assault. In New York, there is no criminal charge for battery, but they have enough to say that she intentionally struck someone and she caused injury. We saw the picture of the injury, so I think we'll see that.
Yeah, there's also potential for attempted robbery charges as she injured someone in the attempt to try to take someone's cell phone that wasn't hers. Well, of course, keep an update on that. Coming up on Law and Crime Daily, arguments over possibly removing the prosecutor of the so-called doomsday cult duo continue. Plus, remember the case of a mother accused of forcing her daughter to be wheelchair-bound and hospitalized? Well, we've got an update to the status of her convicted killer you don't want to miss after the break. Attorneys for the man serving a life sentence for the murder of Dee Dee Blanchard are seeking post-conviction relief. Nicholas Godejohn was convicted of brutally stabbing to death the mother of his girlfriend, Gypsy Blanchard. Dee Dee Blanchard apparently suffered from Munchausen by proxy and forced Gypsy to be in a wheelchair, claiming her daughter had cancer and other illnesses to get money for charity. A psychologist who interviewed Godejohn told the Law and Crime Network that Godejohn does suffer from mental illness, but has full reasoning and judgment skills.
The term mental capacity, whether or not he lacked that, that's a really good question. And it's a bit of a difficult phrase because it's really better to say, you know, did he have diminished mental capacity as opposed to completely lacking it? And that was the problem in his situation because the key issue is that he needed to have intent to do the crime. And in Missouri, you know, there's 3 different aspects. And the issue that was most relevant was the issue of deliberation. Did he have cool reflection upon the matter for any length of time, no matter how short? And so in that regard, Nicholas did have the ability to form intent. And so the notion of diminished capacity, well, in that regard, he would not have met and did not meet the legal criteria for diminished capacity, even though he did have a genuine mental health concern.
Julie, you followed this case. What do you make of the arguments made for Godejohn? Do you see other potential better arguments, or is this the best one they've got so far?
So, you know, keep in mind a post-conviction relief, when you try to seek that, it usually means that you've used up all of your other appeals. And so you're kind of boiled down to very little. And usually the road that they follow is where they accuse their attorney of doing something wrong. We haven't seen the exact nature of what it's going to be in this case, but I'm guessing that's the road they're going to take, that somehow there was some incompetence on the part of the attorney. Now, it might relate to the intellect or competence of this defendant. I'm not sure, but I don't think they're going to be successful at the end, as they haven't been prior to this.
All right, so Terri, weigh in on the success here. It is, as Julie said, a very narrow argument. Do you think the defense will be successful here?
I don't. I agree wholeheartedly with Julie here. I think it's very difficult to get post-conviction relief. I mean, if you think about it, every convicted person would be trying to do this. They are very limited grounds. You know, it would have to be something as serious as the trial court had no jurisdiction, or that the sentence exceeded the maximum possible sentence, or that there was some violation of constitutional or state law. I don't think that we have any of those things here. I think the claim about the mental, incapacity is really not going to prevail here. That's something they could have argued early on. And so I think it's going to fail here.
Yeah, and Terri, the list you gave us is actually, the statutory list of what they can do, because this, as Julie said, it's very different than a typical appeal. It's a last straw. You've got a couple swings at this tree to kind of knock down the appeal. I agree with you both. I don't see it here, but you've got to shoot your shot. Thank you both. When we come back, why the mother accused of covering up her children's death thinks she's being unfairly prosecuted. An inside look into the Lori Vallow case. Continuing coverage for a hearing for the so-called doomsday cult couple trying to disqualify their prosecutor. Terri Austin has been following this case closely and is here to break down the legal arguments.
Brian, it's a case that's making national headlines, not only because of how bizarre it is, but because there's so many unanswered questions. Lori Vallow and her husband, Chad Daybell, are facing charges of conspiring to conceal and destroy evidence in the deaths of Vallow's 2 children. The bodies of JJ and Tylee Ryan were discovered buried in a shallow grave on Daybell's Idaho property. They're not charged with murder, but the prosecutor was heard during a secretly recorded meeting with Vallow's sister, saying he plans to file conspiracy to commit murder charges. The defense now wants prosecutor Rob Wood removed and hired a law professor at the University of Idaho who says Wood's actions are concerning.
Is that I feel like the prosecutor is giving a narrative to the witness, incentivizing the witness to tell a specific story, and providing her with, a little bit of, subtle pressure that would encourage her, I think, to give a story that would coincide with the state's theory of the case.
So you can't say to a specificity whether this was witness influence or whether it was not. You can't say to a certainty. Is that fair?
I think I can say it's coaching clearly under just what the established guidelines are, which is not necessarily prohibited. You can coach a witness. To some degree, the law encourages lawyers to sit down with the witness and work with them before they testify. Where it's improper is undue. And what I can't say is whether this witness felt pressure to change her story, which is where this would become ethically problematic.
On cross, an attorney for prosecutor Rob Wood asked if the witness was coached, what's the remedy?
I would think it would be in the court's prerogative to determine the best approach, but I don't think it's unreasonable for the court to bring in the witness and ask her, you recall this conversation with the prosecutor, did it influence your testimony in any way? Did it cause you to change your opinion about what you wanted to, did you feel pressure to implicate Chad Daybell? Did you feel pressure to try to get your sister off? If the witness is saying, yes, I did, well, then I think the questions would be, well, then in what ways did you change your statements to the police? And if she did, I mean, those can be corrected in advance of trial, right? If the witness is willing to take the oath and testify truthfully in front of a jury, then I don't see how there would be a problem at trial.
Julie, as a former prosecutor, you've interviewed probably hundreds, if not thousands, of witnesses. In your eyes, did Wood do something wrong here?
Yeah, no. Do I love everything he said? No. Did I find everything he said to be of the utmost professional? No, I don't think talking about someone as a wimp or that they peed their pants or would have is appropriate. But do I think that it rose to the level of causing him to have to be removed from this case? Absolutely not. The witness could be cross-examined for anything that they feel may have hindered or impacted her ability to give honest testimony.
Now, Terri, you've given your opinion on this in the past, but you've also been following it day by day. Have any of these arguments swayed you or solidified your opinion in any way?
Once again, I do not think that this has reached the level of prosecutorial misconduct. I agree 100% with Julie again. And this witness, Samuel Newton, I mean, he was a criminal law professor. He gave a lot of opinions regarding that this came close to the line of misconduct, or maybe close to the line of being unethical, or maybe close to the line of even being criminal. But he said it didn't cross, in his opinion. And the whole question is whether or not Summer was influenced in terms of changing her testimony. And right now we don't have that. And in fact, he said he couldn't say what her thoughts might be later down the line, and he couldn't say what Rob Wood's intention was. So I think at the end of the day, Rob Wood is going to stay on this case, and he's not going to be dismissed.
Yeah, it's very interesting to see how this played out. I saw a lot of the evidence coming in as being as a potential, but not necessarily right to that level. Julie and Terri, thank you for joining us, and thank you for joining us here at Law and Crime Daily. We'll see you next time as we discuss justice in America.